Chapter 1941. Tianmeng Mountain 3. Ziyan's face was taut, and her fists on the sides were clenched tightly. Beichen Ying's broad hand held hers and gently consoled her in a low voice. Luo will be okay. Since she dares to rush in, she has 100% confidence of being able to leave. You have to believe in her. I know. Ziyan bit her lower lip and nervously nodded. But I still can't help but feel anxious. Concern only make it more chaotic. Beichen Ying's eyes were fixed on the light screen. His voice was deep and low. I'm afraid too. The dense mass of man-eating crocodiles. Each one had a ferocious mouth, sharp and cold teeth. Their strength was at least at commander rank, who wouldn't be afraid. However, as the person involved, Su Luo was really not afraid. Not only was she not afraid, her mood at this time could be said to be totally excited. Seeing countless man-eating crocodiles coming up, the corner Su Luo's mouth slowly evoked a sneer. At this moment, she let go the man-eating crocodile under her feet. One only saw her figure as fast as lightning. In a flash, the outermost man-eating crocodile rushed in. The crocodile was so pitiful that it kept trying to squeeze in, but all around there were a dense crowd of man-eating crocodiles. There was not a single gap, which made it covered with sweat, but it still couldn't get in. He was so anxious that he was about to cry. Just then, a heavy object landed on its head. Which evildoer dare to actually step on its head? The crocodile turned its head angrily and saw a delicious food. Yes, in his eyes, wasn't Su Luo the most delicious food? At this point, all those outside the light screen looked dumbfounded and then laughed out loud one by one. It's ridiculous. Does she think that if she jumps out like this, the man-eating crocodile will let her go? Does she think that the man-eating crocodile she was stepping on would still foolishly flee while carrying her away? Doesn't she know that the time of her death has come? All of those people looked at Su Luo with derision. In their eyes, how ridiculous was Su Luo's behavior. But soon, all of their smiles became stiff, and then they could not smile at all. Within the man-eating swamp, after Su Luo flew out, the one who had just consumed and swallowed the celestial spirit water had not even digested it yet, but its body had already been ripped apart by countless man-eating crocodiles, torn to pieces. Blood stained with the black mud. After killing their target, the fierce crocodiles all turned their heads and aim at Su Luo. What about Su Luo at this time? Before the man-eating crocodiles launched an attack, Su Luo had skillfully shot a water arrow into a crocodile's mouth. Naturally, this water arrow was celestial spirit water. And then the little sable, with the animal language, overbearingly repeated that sentence. Therefore, the man-eating crocodile who had just gained the advantage turned its head and looked at the little friends who was rushing toward it. It was immediately became scared and darted forward like an arrow. The speed was frightening. Heavens, what's going on there? Onlookers outside the light screen watched as the man-eating crocodile was so frightened until it almost fainted. That man-eating crocodile actually ran away with Su Luo. It even ran at lightning speed. If it was just one time, it was okay, but this was the second time. What did this mean? This showed that although Su Luo couldn't control all the man-eating crocodiles, she could control one of them. For Su Luo, whose goal was only to pass through the man-eating crocodile swamp, this was enough. Chapter 1942. Tianmeng Mountain 4. Lin Banley's mouth opened slightly in surprise, and even forgot to fan himself. This can't be? Lin Banley opened his mouth and stared at the light screen in disbelief. What exactly is going on? How could Su Luo control the man-eating crocodile? Their commander ranked Ah. Lin Banley rubbed his eyes incredulously, but when he opened his eyes, he saw that Su Luo jumped on the second crocodile in the same way, and then the second man-eating crocodile was also pitifully torn to pieces and eaten by its friends. Lin Banley was shocked. Even Lin Banley was like this. The other people were naturally even more shocked. At this time, these people were all craned their necks and stared unwaveringly at the light screen. Their bodies were motionless as if their acupuncture point had been hit. In the light screen, Su Luo had no idea how much sensation she had caused from her behavior. She only knew that she was playing enthusiastically now. Although she was surrounded by murderous man-eating crocodiles, she was not afraid because she had the celestial spirit water. The fourth man-eating crocodile. The fifth man-eating crocodile. The sixth man-eating crocodile. Countless man-eating crocodiles were turned as stepping stones by Su Luo, and then they were miserably torn and eaten by their friends. It was unknown how many crocodiles she had used. Su Luo only knew that she was having a lot of fun. But inevitably everything had its end. The same was true with Crocodile Swamp. In the vast and boundless Crocodile Swamp, finally the shoreline appeared. There was a flash of surprise in Su Luo's eyes. Soon after, she urged the dumb man-eating crocodile to rush forward. Just as all the man-eating crocodiles tried to stop her, Su Luo leaped forward hundreds of meters away. Then she stood steadily on the shore. Su Luo looked back and smiled slightly. Her exquisite and beautiful face appeared on the light screen, which made many people stunned for a while. At this moment, Su Luo had completed the second mountain pass in the man-eating swamp, and she rushed to the third mountain pass. 24 hours seemed to be a lot, but it was not much at all if it was divided by 9. In front of the light screen, Lin Banley touched his forehead and sighed. This girl, she actually has real skills. It's really unexpected. Louis returned to her senses from the shock and gave Lin Banley an unhappy look. Senior brother Lin, why should you increase other people's ambition and destroy your prestige? That Su Luo is just a little bit lucky, nothing more. Was it really just a bit of luck? If it was before, Lin Banley would think so, but his mind was shaken by surprise again and again. Qing Yi sneered. It's just the simplest 2-mountain pass. What are you surprised at? At this time, the people finally remembered that, yes, there were the next 7 passes, but 8 hours had passed. The simplest 2 passes took 8 hours. In this way, it seemed that Su Luo was not outstanding at all. She could not even reach the passing line of the other candidates. Think of it this way. Everyone laughed bitterly and shook their heads. Before this, they were almost fooled by Su Luo's tricks. After passing the man-eating swamp, the third pass was the Thread of Sky. The so-called the Thread of Sky was a sky bridge. Su Luo looked at the bridge in front of her, and her head was dizzy and her feet were a little unstable. This sky bridge was truly worthy of the name. A thin thread, which was not as thick as a hair, to a degree that it was almost negligible to the naked eye. Chapter 1943, Tianmeng Mountain 5. However, it was extending all the way across the 2 peaks. Su Luo was standing on one end of the mountain. She could hardly see the other end of the mountain peak. She could only see a small black spot. It was surrounded by clouds and heavy mist, like a wonderland. Su Luo deliberately kicked a piece of broken rock. After a long time, there was a faint voice. How high was this valley? Su Luo's heart shivered. It was forbidden to fly in this area. In other words, she couldn't do anything to resist the wind. If she fell, it was very likely that her life would cease to exist. The sky bridge, the Thread of Sky. Although it was difficult, it's not more difficult than the previous 2 mountain passes. So, what mechanism was hidden in the dark? Su Luo had always been careful and cautious, and would not take anything lightly. Sure enough, under Su Luo's careful observation, she saw eagles resting among the ancient trees on the precipice. Su Luo looked at the thread in front of her and at the traces of eagles, and a slight smile arose at the corner of her mouth. Eagles, right? Then come on. After making a good plan, Su Luo took a deep breath and held her breath. Then, she stretched her hands horizontally and rushed forward as fast as the speed of light. Su Luo was very fast. She already rushed a few thousands of meters in a blink of an eye. However, at this moment, suddenly there was a dense crowd of creatures came from afar. From a distance, it was like a fast-moving dark cloud covering the whole sky. As she went, their hissing noises were extremely ear-piercing, piercing the absent-minded people. Su Luo was stumped and almost fell down. Fortunately, she had been mentally prepared and her feet were stable. But even so, she was still affected. The dark clouds came very fast. The direction they came to was towards Su Luo's direction. So, the 2 sides soon converged. These dark clouds shrouded over Su Luo's head. They made rumbling sounds and making one's eardrums extremely painful and almost lost one's mind. Su Luo felt a shadow hold her, as if the daytime turned into night all of a sudden. Looking up, at this moment, she could already see clearly. With one glance, Su Luo wished she could close her eyes. At first, she thought they were eagles, and she thought they were easy to deal with. But now she did not think so. These birds with fluttering black wings were really resembled eagles, but they had a woman's head. That is, the legendary harpy. Those two eyes are green, cruel, and poisonous. Su Luo's eyes were stinging and extremely painful. Moreover, these harpies were like a sea of the people. There were so many of them. From what Su Luo saw, she estimated there were over 10,000 of them. At this moment, Su Luo was almost gave up all hope. There were tens of thousands of harpies. Although their strength had not reached commander rank, they were only 10 ranked, but they were so dense. What's more, Su Luo was now stepping on a thread thinner than hair, and there were bottomless cliff below. Meet face to face on the narrow path. One was stepping on a tight rope, the other was flying in the air. Could the treatment be any more different? The harpies let out a series of violent screams. They seemed to be extremely excited, and their eyes were bright, as if they had been starving for 10 days. What's to be done? She had to find a way out. In these circumstances, she could only outwit them, but not fight them. Su Luo's brain was running fast, expecting to come up with a solution before the harpies attacked. Chapter 1944, Tianmeng Mountain 6. But after all, the solution was not so easy to think about, and the enemy in front of her was impatient. They had been hungry for so long, and they clearly knew what's called first come first served, what's fast hand and slow hand. So, a cry rang out. Then, over 10,000 of harpies all rushed towards Su Luo. Shit! Su Luo scolds secretly. Suddenly, she rushes forward. She hurriedly ran as far as she could. However, before Su Luo could run far, the harpies had already flown rapidly behind Su Luo. Su Luo could feel countless of them clawing at her. She could feel that countless of them seemingly wanted to tear her to pieces. She could feel dread from the bottom of her heart, like the god of death was approaching her. However, the closer to this moment of life and death, the calmer Su Luo's heart became. In the end, the thin thread was finally broken by the 10,000 of harpies. Without the thread of sky, how could Su Luo go to the other side? Su Luo was able to feel that her feet were slipping. She raised her head, even though the thread of sky was falling down. In front of the light screen, many people's eyes were all staring unwaveringly at the screen. Their hearts seemed to be pinched by a hand, and they even forgot to breathe. Broken, broken. The bridge is broken. Su Luo is toast. How can she go to the other side without the thread of sky? A person with such beautiful appearance. Could it be she's going to die just like this? What a pity. At this time, the faction that favored Su Luo had risen from only 5% to 15%, and the momentum was also a bit greater. All of them were having cold sweat because of Su Luo. Ziyin and the others stared nervously at the screen. There's no more trace of playfulness. Qing Yi and Lu Yi sneered and rejoiced in other people's misfortune. They really wished Su Luo would fall down and die without an intact corpse. However, if Su Luo really died that easily, she would not be able to reach the heights she was today. And at this moment, Su Luo was surrounded by the harpies. Su Luo fiercely gritted her teeth. Good, you guys destroyed my bridge. You have to make it up for me. Just as Su Luo's body rapidly falling, she extended her hand, grabbed one of the harpies' wings closest to her. Then she moved her body and sat firmly on its shoulder. The harpy was startled, and when the harpy realized it, she turned her head and attacked Su Luo. At this time, the rest of the harpies were also attacking Su Luo. Countless of sharp mouths, sharp claws, sharp noises, all were attacking towards Su Luo. If attacked, Su Luo would instantly become a pile of flesh. However, at this time, Su Luo's figure suddenly flashed. In the center of the siege, Su Luo's figure had long gone. But the harpies couldn't stop for a moment. all of them continuously called out to their friends. Because they saw blood, they fought against each other. As for why Su Luo disappeared, in fact, Su Luo had used this skill once when she was besieged in the Heavenly Puppet Array. In order to conceal this card, she rarely used it. If it was not a life-and-death situation, she would not use it. This skill was called Teleport. In the last second when Su Luo was surrounded by all the harpies and almost died under their siege, she teleported, and then escaped successfully. Chapter 1945, Tianmeng Mountain 7. Because of the blood, it was necessary to determine the winner and the loser until one side falls. After observing for a long time, Su Luo came to such conclusion, and the facts also prove this conclusion. In fact, if seeing blood could make them kill their own companions, Su Luo was willing to use the Cheng Ying sword to leave traces of blood on their body. However, in that case, all the hatred will be placed on Su Luo. She won't be able to handle it. Since it was out of the question, Su Luo could only find ways to make them fight and bleed each other. In this way, Su Luo could steal an opportunity to live. Therefore, Su Luo seized the weakness of the harpies and used her own teleport skills to move. Then she deliberately let herself be surrounded once again, and then used her teleport skill to escape. The direction that Su Luo chose when she deliberately let herself be surrounded was naturally forward, because the thread of sky had been torn off. Outside the light screen, all of those people were flabbergasted. What's going on? Why can't I understand it? Are my eyes broken? When Su Luo was surrounded, how can I not understand how she appeared at the other side? This Miss Su's means are really endless. Whoever confronts her face to face, even if her cultivation is just SOSO, they will suffer a lot. At this time, originally, the faction that favored Su Luo was only 15%. After her amazing performance and how she escaped dangers over and over again, it was now expanded to 25%. Lu Yi's complexion was exceptionally unsightly. She tightly clenched her fist, and the veins in the back of her hand seemed ready to burst. She angrily cursed. What kind of life is this? Really can't die. That's only the third mountain pass. What's the hurry? Compared to Lu Yi, who was fuming with rage, Qing Yi's mood was stable and her face was indifferent. In her opinion, Su Luo was only full of tricks and did not have real skills. She did not take Su Luo seriously at all. Senior sister, don't tell me you are not anxious at all? Maybe she could really reach to the summit. Lu Yi was very anxious. Qing Yi glared at her. Why is your vision so narrow? As it gets further behind, the more difficult will be. There's only 12 hours left, and there are still mountain passes left. Do you think she could pass? That's true. Seeing that her senior sister Qing Yi was so calm and composed, Lu Yi's impatient and restless heart settled down, and then she sat on the chair steadily, watching Su Luo's life and death performance. Su Luo also knew that a long time had passed, but these harpies were more and more difficult to cheat, so her progress slowed down. However, it is precisely because of her method that the harpies suffered a great deal of injuries and had lost approximately 1,000. Inside the quiet main hall, the first elder and the third elder were playing chess. The first elder slightly smiled. His smile was gentle. His right hand moved the black piece and placed it on the jade chessboard. Compared to the first elder, who was relaxed and comfortable, the third elder brows were tightly knitted, and she dropped a piece impatiently. Your heart is anxious. The first elder smiled and shook his head, and the black chess piece was approaching, pressuring the white chess piece. The third elder smiled coldly. Senior brother always helps that loathsome girl. Of course I'm not anxious. The first elder raised his eyes slightly, glanced at the third elder, and smiled unfathomably. I advise you, let the younger generation settle their own affairs. Why do you lower your status to play with them? If his third junior sister would listen to what he said, he would not waste his time to come in person today. Chapter 1946, Tianmeng Mountain 8. However, the three elders sneered again and again and raised her chin obstinately. I'm lowering my status? If you have the ability, tell that loathsome girl not to provoke me. The first elder said very honestly. If you don't make things difficult for her, she won't provoke you. The third elder dropped the chess piece with indignation and coldly scoffed toward first elder. So, first senior brother think this is all my fault? The first elder looked at the third elder, shook his head slightly, and sighed. Qing Lin, don't be stubborn. Stubborn? Ha! I didn't expect that in the first senior brother's eyes. I have that kind of image, wasted my time to treat you as the closest relative. The third elder angrily clenched the white chess piece, threw it on the tabletop, then stood up coldly and turned to leave. Her beautiful red robe drew an elegant arc. The first elder tried to persuade her, but in the end he touched his chin, smiled wryly, and shook his head. After suffering for so many years, little third is still obstinately persist in the wrong way. So why bother? Is the city master a person she could think of? Just because Su Luo got the favor of the city master, she put on this attitude, made things difficult everywhere if the city master returned in the future. Thinking of the words from the city master, the first elder shook his head with a bitter smile. The city master usually did not care about the mundane world. In his world, there was only one thing that matters, which was to find a person. Even when there was something wrong, the city master just coldly passed a few words, but that day, the city master unexpectedly gave him a long sentence for the first time. A long sentence. It frightened him. The first elder raised his head and looked at the third elder and finally comforted her. That's Su Luo. You'd better not touch her, otherwise when the city master comes back, you will definitely suffer. This was the truth. The first elder felt that it was necessary to tell her. However, the first elder rarely persuade others. The result of this sentence was, the third elder turned around in a rage. Her face was malevolent and twisted. First senior brother. If the person in front of her was not her formidable first senior brother, the third elder would definitely jump on him and choke him to death. Could he still stab her heart a little bit more? He blatantly told her that her many years of company couldn't compare to that loathsome girl's position in the city master's heart. The words of the first elder didn't dispel the third elder's thought of persecuting Su Luo, but instead it made her more firmly regard Su Luo as an enemy. At this time, a girl in an orange dress walked in, knelt down on one knee, and reported to the third elder, Master, Su Luo has passed the thread of sky. The third elder's eyes slightly narrowed, looked at the sky outside, and suddenly laughed. There are 12 hours left, and there's still another 6 passes. Ha! First senior brother, it seems you're going to be disappointed. The first elder stroked his white beard and smiled faintly. His smile was as calm as the immortal. He didn't fully believe in Su Luo, but he believed in the city master's vision. Since the city master let the girl take the genius training camp assessment, there was no reason why she could not pass the assessment. First senior brother thinks that loathsome girl can pass? The third elder restrained the aggressive manner just now and drew a complacent smile on her pretty and flirtatious face. The first elder touched his beard, smiled, and nodded. Naturally she could. I don't believe it. The third elder snorted coldly. You know, the later mountain passes is more difficult than the previous ones. This game, the winner has not yet been determined. The first elder glanced across the chessboard. Chapter 1947, Tianmeng Mountain 9. Just now, the third elder renounced the chessboard in anger. The chess pieces above were in a crisscross pattern. The winner or loser had not yet been determined. That's good. The third elder lightly laughed. 12 hours. The result will come out soon. In the light screen, Su Luo did not know that she had been kept in the third elder's mind. She only knew that she had used up a lot of time. If she didn't hurry, even if she had the strength, it would be too late. In that way, it would spoil the previous great efforts. Su Luo gritted her teeth and quickened her steps. Her figure rushed like a hurricane. The fourth mountain pass was the magical domain maze. When she saw this, Su Luo almost looked up to the sky and burst into laughter. Magical domain maze, very good maze. In the roaming dragon's secret territory, Su Luo suffered a lot from a maze, but later she touched the door. It's just a maze, what about it? For others, perhaps they didn't have sufficient ability to deal with it. and they would be trapped inside it. But for Su Luo, the maze was not a problem at all, because Su Luo, she had nothingness of space. Her nothingness of space disregard any copper walls or iron walls, and can completely pass through them, as long as she stayed in the straight direction and did not make any turns and walked straight ahead. Even if she met a wall, she was not worried, she could pass through it. If she met a wall again, no worry, continue to pass through it. Just go all the way through. Any maze for her is of floating clouds. Therefore, Su Luo stood at the entrance of the magical domain maze, with her hands on her hips, and laughed happily. Many people were stunned by Su Luo's actions, and then stared blankly at the petite and live-back figure. Perhaps this girl is terrified? Otherwise, why is she standing in front of the door laughing? Lu Yi was puzzled, Qing Yi was puzzled, Lin Banli was puzzled, Luo Yichen was also puzzled. They all looked at Su Luo with a strange look. But Ziyin and Bai Qining looked at each other, and they saw a complacent smile in each other's eyes. Because the things that Su Luo did in the roaming dragon secret territory were all told to the two of them, and naturally also including the maze. In fact, it could be said that if she encountered any maze in the future, it would be floating clouds for Su Luo, which was a bonus points. In everyone's puzzled eyes, Su Luo was rushing into the magical domain maze. After she went in, Su Luo turned on the nothingness of space, and when she wanted to pass through the seemingly thick wall, she suddenly stopped. Ha ha ha, is she stupid? Don't tell me she wanted to run into the wall? She doesn't think that if she run into the wall, she will be able to go straight ahead, right? How could there be such a stupid human? Don't tell me it's really like that sentence, beautiful appearance, but have no brain? Many people saw Su Luo's posture in front of the wall, all covered their stomach and laughed wildly. In the magical domain maze, although Su Luo didn't know that those people were laughing at her, her movement also stopped, because she suddenly realized a very serious problem. Everything she did was broadcast. If she really did pass through the wall, would she be considered as a monster? Even if she was not considered as a monster, her cards would be completely exposed, right? What to do? Su Luo touched the back of her head in distress. For a moment, she didn't know where to go. Suddenly, a small voice came to her mind. Chapter 1948, Tianmeng Mountain 10. This was the voice of the little sable. Su Luo immediately came back to her senses and heavily slapped her head. Right ah! Didn't the little sable originally came from the maze in the roaming dragon's secret territory? Later, she recognized herself as its master. Wouldn't the maze problem be automatically lifted? Thinking of this, Su Luo quickly released the little sable. The little sable sat on Su Luo's shoulder with a smile, and its little paw pointed forward excitedly. Let's go. So, under the guidance of the little sable, Su Luo rapidly ran forward. Others may take the wrong way, but the little sable had a good sense of direction, which was its innate skill. Therefore, it was absolutely impossible to take the wrong way. The maze was winding and tricky. Every single step was possible to be a mistake, and could finally walk into a dead end. However, Su Luo's progress on the direction made the onlookers flabbergasted. With Su Luo's viewpoint, the crowd could see the panoramic view through the light screen. They could see the layers upon layers of routes inside the maze and the most correct path, because that road was marked with a red line on the light screen, making everyone surprised. When Su Luo make a turn, facing the three options at the crossroads, she could actually choose the right one every time. Not only that, she never once went in the wrong direction. She had been always following the path of the least effort, the shortest distance, the shortest way to go out. For others, it was impossible to get out of the maze without 2 or 4 hours, but Lu Yi nervously took Qing Yi's hand. Senior sister Qing Yi. At that time, how long did it take you to get through the maze? Lu Yi's lips slightly trembled because of tension. Qing Yi suddenly fell. She didn't do very well at that time. It took the strength of 9 bulls and 2 tigers to get out with difficulty. She almost didn't have enough time to reach the summit. She remembered that she spent the most time there among all the mountain passes. Qing Yi didn't answer to Levi. And Lu Yi didn't get angry. Her figure trembled slightly. How about Senior Sister Serene? I remember the time that Senior Sister Serene spent at this mountain pass was 2 hours? 2.5 hours. Lin Banley's voice faintly came behind Lu Yi. He remembered most of the things concerning Serene. But, Lu Yi pointed to Su Luo's shoulder. Her pair of eyes almost spew out fire. She is coming out so quickly. And this time, it hadn't even burned an hour. Aren't you done yet? Qingyi glared at Lu Yi fiercely, and she had never seen anyone so determined to destroy her own prestige. That's all. Lu Yi looked at that bright red shoulder, as well as Su Luo's current position, firmly suppressing the words in her mouth. In fact, Su Luo was now very close to the exit. As long as she could choose the right direction in the last 3 turns, it would only take a little time to get out. Could Su Luo really come out in an hour? Could she really be faster than Senior Sister Serene? Impossible. Lu Yi exhaustedly screamed in her heart. At this time, in the light screen, Su Luo suddenly stopped walking because at this time, there were 9 paths in front of her. These 9 paths were so deep that one couldn't see the end. Su Luo only felt that each one was eerie and horrible. Chapter 1949. Unexpected One. Which one to choose? Su Luo poked the little sable's head. At this time, she was very glad that she had brought this little guy out of the roaming dragon's secret territory. Otherwise, she wouldn't have passed so easily this time. At this time, those people outside saw Su Luo stopped and all stared at her nervously. In fact, it was especially Lu Yi. Lu Yi's pair of eyes stared at Su Luo, especially looking forward in her heart. Make a wrong choice. Make a wrong choice. Make a wrong choice. At this time, Lu Yi hadn't discovered that she was not the only one who shouted these words in the heart. In fact, it was unknown who shouted these words first, so gradually, many people who were against Su Luo also followed. Make a wrong choice. Make a wrong choice. Make a wrong choice. As long as Su Luo chose wrong, she would go on a completely opposite path. On the outside, countless people were nervous. They all hoped that Su Luo would choose the wrong path. At this time, Su Luo was talking with the little sable. The little sable tilted its head. Its black and white eyes wandered around, and then its little paws waved forward. Of course, it's the middle one. Little Sable's voice was very confident. I'll listen to you. Su Luo patted the little sables, and then rushed towards the middle path without the slightest hesitation, without any drag. All the people outside were stunned. How is that possible? What's going on? Can her luck be any better? She's actually right again. Who was so blind? Of course our Luo have good strength. Luck is also part of strength. You have to admit it. It had to be said that after several unexpected performances, the people who support Su Luo had expanded again. Such a peerless beauty, with a good luck and good strength, would be pleasing to look at. Everyone would like it. Lu Yi watched Su Luo rush forward along the red arrow head like the cannonball, and tightly clenched her fist gloomily. Detestable. She passed again. Lu Yi stamped her feet in hatred. Within the light screen, after turning a few corners, Su Luo saw the light in front of the passage, just like the tunnel entrance, calling out from a distance. Su Luo's speed soared to the highest speed. Then after a whooshing sound, when one looked at it again, her figure had already rushed out of the magical domain maze. A burst of enthusiastic applause immediately erupted outside. Came out. Su Luo came out. What a fast speed. This break the record that the Serene Fairy set at the beginning, isn't it? 1 whole hour faster than the Serene Fairy. Heavens. Who the hell is she? She's too much of an evildoer, right? Even surpasses the Serene Fairy. This is impossible. My eyes must be wrong. How can the Serene Fairy's record be broken? There were countless people talking about it. Some were amazed, some found it hard to believe, and some were also naturally resentful. But Su Luo ignored these things. She only knew that she had to rush forward. Her time was running out. Bright Moon Palace Hall. The third elder were playing chess with the first elder in a good mood. First senior brother thinks, How much time will the loathsome girl take to pass through the magical domain maze? The third elder dropped a chess piece with great interest. The first elder glanced at the third elder unhappily. Senior brother only know that child would definitely pass the assessment. Chapter 1950. Unexpected 2. The first elder had a blind confidence in the city master. Huh? The third elder sneered and said, "Then I bet she can't even pass the magical domain maze." The first elder smiled bitterly and shook his head. First senior brother has nothing to say. The third elder said aggressively, "The magical domain maze is the most time-consuming place. Serene had spent more than 2 hours there at that time. If that loathsome girl can come out in 3 hours, I will—" Just then, Chung-yi, who was waiting outside the door, walked in and knelt on one knee. "Master, Su Luo has passed the magical domain maze." Chung-yi knelt on her knee, enraged and very unconvinced. "What did you say?" The third elder suddenly stood up and stared at Chung-yi coldly. Her tone was filled with disbelief. It hadn't even been 2 hours yet. How could she come out? Chung-yi's face was also unconvinced. This disciple also doesn't understand, but the news from there is true. The message came from Lu Yi's own mouth, so it should not be wrong. It's less than 2 hours. The third elder took a deep breath and felt her throat burning with pain. In 1 hour, it is said that Su Luo came out in 1 hour. Chung-yi gnashed her teeth in anger. The third elder's body shook. She took a deep breath and sat back on the red chair, frowning tightly, muttering to herself, "This is impossible. That loathsome girl's strength is so weak. How can she break the Serene's record? There must be a reason." The third elder suddenly raised her head. Her eyes were burning, staring at the first elder in front of her. Her voice was as cold as ice. "First senior brother, did you secretly make any arrangement?" The first elder touched his white beard and smiled bitterly. Does junior sister believe that she could point out the right path because senior brother secretly make arrangements? The third elder didn't speak, but her face was serious, like a piercing cold wind. Her eyes clearly meant that. The first elder smiled more and more helplessly and spread his hands. Third junior sister ought to know that the magical domain maze was created by the city master himself. Every half hour, all the routes will change irregularly. I can't help her even if I wanted to. Seeing what the first elder said was reasonable, the third elder just withdrew her gaze, but the expression on her face was still in a very bad mood like before. "That girl has a good luck," the third elder said with a sneer, "but luck can't support her until the end. Just watch. Soon she will know that power is everything." After thinking about it, the third elder relaxed again. She continued to play with the first elder in a good mood. But before long, Chung-yi came in again. Seeing Chung-yi coming in, the third elder suddenly had a very bad premonition. She frowned coldly and stared at Chung-yi unhappily. Chung-yi didn't want to come in, but who asked her to be only disciple left who could step into the inner palace hall to take care of things? Chung-yi was very helpless. She reluctantly walked to the third elder, knelt down on one knee, and said dejectedly, "Master." She passed again. The 5 fingers in the third elder's sleeves slightly clenched. A cold light burst out in her cold eyes. "Speak clearly." Being stared at by her ferocious eyes, her back felt cold, and her heart trembled. However, she had to tell the truth again. "Master Su Luo, I don't know how it happened. She actually passed the Yinyang Mountain." "How long?" The third elder closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "More than an hour time." Chung-yi was tongue-tied. Chapter 1951. Unexpected 3. The third elder clenched her fists, and the blue veins on the back of her hands were suddenly beating violently. She closed her eyes and took several deep breaths, then suppressing the jittery feeling on the pit of her stomach. Then, she slowly opened her eyes, calmly looked at Chung-yi, and said a few words. "Then go, find out." "Yes." Chung-yi accepted the order and walked away. Just now, under her master's glare, her back had already been soaked with sweat. When she came out, a cold wind was blowing. She immediately shivered. Chung-yi stood on tiptoe and looked in the direction of the mountain. In Enyang Mountain, Su Luo didn't break Senior Sister Serene's record this time, but it was almost the same amount of time as Senior Sister Serene, which was absolutely unforgivable. Cheng-Yi tightly clenched her hands and prays in her heart. The next time the news comes, it would take longer and longer. Otherwise, she could not bear her master's anger at all. But Su Luo didn't seem to want to make the two people have an easy time. In the Bright Moon Palace Hall, the third elder was sneering at the first elder. First senior brother has a good eye for people. That loathsome girl actually has some abilities. Why does third junior sister fight with a young girl? Let it go, the first elder persuaded. I'm a little old. What am I fighting with a young girl? As long as she's willing to give me the diamond token, this matter will be over. The third elder sneered. The first elder smiled bitterly and shook his head. Even if the girl agreed, the city master would not agree. In that case, first senior brother, you don't need to try to persuade me. I don't believe in the 6th mountain pass. She can pass so easily. This time, it's the 10,000s ant cave. Countless of ants. Let's see how she could pass. When the third elder sneered, Cheng-Yi clenched her fists and came in slowly. Master! Cheng-Yi wanted to say something, but did not quickly say, timidly called out. The blue veins in the third elder's forehead suddenly throbbing. She looked at the hourglass not far away, then glared at Cheng-Yi. Don't tell me, she passed again? The third elder glared at Cheng-Yi and almost made her cry. But the fact was, she couldn't lie to the third elder, so she could only say the truth with a mournful face. Master Su Luo, she passed again. As she said that, she fell on her knees. It's not that she automatically knelt down, but in that moment, the third elder burst out a terrible might. Under this pressure, Cheng-Yi only felt that her limbs gone soft, and her back was like it was carrying a mountain. The pressure was about to make her body fall apart. 1 hour to pass the 10,000 ant cave. This girl, she's really hard to predict. The first elder laughed. The third elder glared at the first elder ferociously and gritted her teeth and waved her hand, permitting Cheng-Yi to go out. But after Cheng-Yi went out, before she gained a firm foothold, news came from the mountain. Su Luo had passed the 7th mountain pass. Cheng-Yi truly wanted to cry. Can she not be so fast? Ah, that's a call for her death. Ah, Master's anger is too much for her. Okay, but could she not go in? The consequences of not going in would be even worse. So, the pitiful Cheng-Yi braced herself, step by step silently went in. The third elder had not even sit down yet, but she saw Cheng-Yi came in again. She immediately became furious. What's the matter? Is Su Luo dead? It's only a half hour. It's absolutely impossible for it to be the news that Su Luo has passed. Chapter 1952, Unexpected 4. Facing the third elder's expectant eyes, Cheng-Yi shivered from head to toe. Ma, Master, Su Luo isn't dead. Cheng-Yi swallowed her saliva and said with difficulty, Don't come in and disturb me if you don't have anything important. The third elder waved. Today, she really didn't want to see Cheng-Yi because seeing her meant that her mood would be getting worse. Master Su Luo passed again. Cheng-Yi's face was sullen. Tears were flowing out. Puff! The first elder, who was drinking his tea, almost spurted out the tea. The third elder turned around and stared at Cheng-Yi, unable to speak for a while. A half of an hour? The third elder's voice was calm. It's less than a half of an hour. Cheng-Yi made another cut. The third elder gritted her teeth and stared at the Cheng-Yi. Her eyes looked fierce as if she wanted to flay and swallow Cheng-Yi alive. You? Before the third elder finished speaking, there was a slight noise outside. Is senior sister Cheng-Yi in or not? Although this sentence was said with a low voice, it was very clear in the silent Bright Moon Palace Hall. Get in here! The third elder shouted out angrily. The voice was like thunder, and the whole Bright Moon Palace Hall was shaking, as if there was a violent earthquake. This showed how angry the third elder was. Soon a timid figure came in. This one was not named after a color, so her status was inferior to Cheng-Yi and the others. She was not qualified to serve in the inner palace hall. At this time, she was frightened by the third elder's shout, and she directly knelt. Don't let this seat repeat it for the second time. Get in. The third elder was raised her hand. Soon after, a long multicolored sailcloth flew out of her sleeve and quickly attacked the timid figure. The long multicolored sailcloth was pulled back, and the figure fell to the ground pitifully. The little junior disciple only felt that her chi and blood in her whole body was rolling, and there was no place in her whole body where it didn't hurt, but she didn't even dare to let out a suppressed groan. "Ma, master!" The little junior disciple gritted her teeth, preventing tears from falling. "Speak!" The third elder was furious. Except for the city master, the entire purgatory city, who could handle her. So, she developed her willful and unbridled behavior, and her personality was getting even more temperamental lately. She wanted to kill and kill someone again. And again, she passed again. The little junior disciple was trembling all over with fear. The third elder felt suffocated in her chest. Her breathing made her chest moved up and down violently. She passed again. This was already the 8th mountain pass. The third elder was confused. "First senior brother, if I remember correctly, the further you go, the harder it will get, right?" "That's right," said the first elder with a smile. From beginning to end, the first elder's expression remained the same, with a slight smile, gentle and kind. "Senior brother, are sure you did not deliberately leak the water?" The third elder squinted and stared at the first elder without blinking and did not want to miss any emotion on his face. The first elder slightly smiled. "Third junior sister overestimate the strength of the elder brother too much. The level was personally created by the city master. Who can tamper it?" The third elder also knew this, but she was having difficulty to convince herself. Why Su Luo getting faster every time? She even broke the Serene Fairy's record. The third elder took a deep breath and stared coldly at the first elder. Chapter 1953. Unexpected 5. The vision of the city master has never been doubted. "I don't believe she can pass the last mountain pass." The third elder snorted coldly. "First senior brother could sit here. Younger sister will not accompany you." She hardly finished speaking, but the third elder already gone to the back of the palace hall, regardless of the first elder expression. What she meant was to see the guest off. However, the first elder had no intention of leaving. There were a slight smile on his face. He played chess with himself. In the Baimang Mountain, within the light screen, after 3 passes in a row, Su Luo's mind was still as tense as before. Outsiders only thought that she has passed very quickly, but no one knows how many of hardships she's been through. Of course, it had a lot to do with the endless stream of treasures in her space. After passing 8 mountain passes in a row, Su Luo's body was very exhausted. Su Luo calculated the time and found that there were still 4 hours left, so her heart was slightly relaxed. If the last 4 hours were used to pass the last mountain pass, there should be enough time. Therefore, Su Luo sat on the spot with her legs crossed, swallowed a spirit restoration pill, and then entered in a cultivation state so that the spirit in her body could heal her wounds. Beyond the light screen, the group of people were dumbfounded. One by one, their eyes were spinning, unable to believe the truth. "This world, I don't understand anymore. Things have come to this stage. It's completely beyond my imagination. Who would have thought that the young lady who was still at the 10th rank yesterday, and the young lady who had just been promoted to the commander rank for less than 24 hours, would break several Serene Fairies records in a row? Maybe this girl had always been pretending to be a pig and to eat the tiger?" Some people questioned. Yeah, right? Anyone with eyes could see that she was promoted to commander rank a few hours ago. I can only say she has a good luck. Many people shook their heads and refused to believe what they saw. Louis saw these people turn to Su Luo one after another. Her heart was about to explode. She couldn't help sneering loudly. "There's still the 9th mountain pass. The 9th mountain pass is the hardest." Who said that she can definitely pass? Yes, there was still the 9th mountain pass. If she did not pass the 9th mountain pass, what's the point even if she passed the 8 mountain passes fast? Thinking of the 9th mountain pass, many people who had confidence in Su Luo could not help but withdrew. The ninth mountain pass, like a curse for all the assessment candidates. There are countless people who had passed the first 8 passes but failed in the ninth mountain pass. It was as if the highest difficulty in the entire assessment was in the ninth mountain pass. Because in the third level, it was depending on luck. Because there are 9 types of assignment, and there were all kinds of messy assignment. If the assessment candidates have a good luck, they were likely to get easy assignment and pass with no efforts. So, this assessment was based on luck. Of course, if one drawn the hardest of the 9 options, then they could only be considered unlucky. Su Luo took a half of an hour to rest, adjusted her body to the best state, and then set off on the way with ease. Ninth Mountain Pass. The wind and fire formed the sky. Su Luo ran all the way up the winding path. At a distance, Su Luo could already see the fiery blood-red flower on the top of the mountain. As long as she picked that flower, it would prove that she had passed the second level. Chapter 1954. Unexpected 6. But Su Luo was 1.5 kilometers away from that lovely blood-red flower, and she was obstructed. The barrier of the wind and fire formed the sky were here. This was a call on the flat ground in front of the call. At this moment, 2 huge figures blocked Su Luo head-on. Su Luo glanced at them. Her eyes narrowed slightly. What a tall puppets. There are 2 in total. Each one was as tall as a 3 stories building. Su Luo could only look up. At this time, Su Luo was standing under their footsteps. She had no doubt that if the other side stepped on her, she would be trampled into minced meat. So, Su Luo's figure quickly retreated. When 2 puppets saw Su Luo, they sneered ferociously. They didn't even give Su Luo the time to prepare. The moment they saw Su Luo, they attacked her directly. How powerful should a puppet with the height of 3 stories building be? Su Luo found it a bit hard to imagine, but when she saw the fire-attributed puppet in front of her coming over and attacking her, Su Luo teleported. But at the mountain wall behind her, a huge cave appeared, and the rocks were flying everywhere. Su Luo set her eyes and found that the cave smashed by the fiery puppet's fist was 20 meters deep. 20 meters deep. Su Luo fully believed that if she was hit head-on, she would be directly smashed. Before she could get back to her senses, another puppet with wind attribute had already stepped forward and made 2 thumping sounds. With only 2 steps, he had already come behind Su Luo. It lifted its foot, which was 10 feet in size, and ruthlessly stepped on Su Luo. Su Luo felt a shadow shrouding her, and a bad premonition suddenly rose in her heart. She had no time to look up. She only saw that her feet slipped and her body flew forward. Bang! There was a loud noise. The puppet, 3 stories high, heavily stepped on the ground. Although he did not step on Su Luo, but a huge and deep pit appeared on the ground, which almost buried the whole of the puppet's foot. Su Luo looked back and saw this scene. A huge drop of cold sweat hung from her forehead. She patted herself on the chest in terror. Fortunately, she ran fast. Otherwise, she would be the one who was buried and couldn't climb out. Before Su Luo turned her head, 2 fire-attributed puppets had come to Su Luo's side again. Because their bodies had an innate superiority, they're only a few steps away. As soon as Su Luo saw it, she immediately became dumbfounded and then howled with grief in her heart. When she met 2 stupid guys, she really had a feeling of powerlessness. Then, these 2 heavy guys seemed to always hate Su Luo all along. No matter how Su Luo ran and escaped, they tenaciously blocked her. She couldn't run far. Su Luo tried to resist. She applied 10% of her strength, crippled the legs of one of the puppets. However, this incident almost destroyed Su Luo's entire confidence, because the other side was simply immune to her attacks. So, Su Luo fought with these 2 giants. Aside from dodging or evading, aside from avoiding or stepping away, she couldn't break the other side's defense. If it goes on like this, Su Luo would have to lose. This was no way at all. Su Luo ran back and forth to avoid, and at the same time, she quickly tried to find a way in her mind. Her physical strength was constantly declining, and her spiritual strength was constantly disappearing. As she moved forward, her disadvantages become more apparent. Chapter 1955. Unexpected 7. Even if her physical strength could be overlooked, but time was not waiting for anyone. 2 hours had passed. Su Luo forced herself to calm down. There is a way. There must be a way. She worked so hard for so long and experienced so many dangerous things. How could she fail? Another hour had passed. Only the last half hour was left. Because of avoiding 2 huge and powerful puppets, Su Luo constantly bruised her body. At this time, she was in a sorry figure. Several times, Su Luo almost died under the foot of the puppet. Fortunately, she had a sensitive sixth sense and dodged fast enough, so she could avoid every time. But this is not the way to go. Seeing there was less and less time, Su Luo's heart became more and more calm. There must be a way. There must be. The wind-attributed puppet continuously failed to trample this little ant to death. He immediately became furious. He howled, Athena, "Eh?" A wheel suddenly appeared under its feet. In fact, the wheels were actually as small as a normal human foot, and it was almost negligible when it was placed under the large feet of wind-attributed puppet. At the same time, the fire-attributed puppet howled, and a fire wheel appeared under its feet. If it wasn't for Su Luo's short body, and she could hardly see those wheels, Su Luo felt that something was wrong. Sure enough, at this moment, 2 puppets went berserk. They rushed towards Su Luo like the wind. It was twice as fast as before. Obviously, it's the work of those wheels. A wind wheel, a fire wheel. Together it was the wind-fire wheel. Su Lu thought in her heart that if these 2 wheels were tied to her feet, she could escape, but unfortunately, the props were at the hands of the other side. At this time, Su Luo had no time to think about it, because there was not enough time to escape. Compared to the previous situation, Su Luo's current situation was even worse. What to do? Su Luo was anxious. At this moment, the little sable suddenly made a sound. Master, there are 2 monkeys behind the call. It's golden monkeys." The little sable's voice was a little excited. Su Luo smiled bitterly. What about the white monkeys or the golden monkeys? She would rather turn into a monkey herself as long as she could escape. There is something in that monkey's hand. Move it, and the stupid huge guys will run. It's fun. The little sable clapped excitedly and seemed to want to grab it. Su Luo's eyes brightened as soon as she heard it. Listening to the meaning of this little sable's words, could it be? This time, Su Luo had chosen the escape route. Like the wind, she rushed to the 2 golden monkeys from the little sable's mouth. The 2 monkeys saw Su Luo come over at full speed, whined twice, turned around, and ran away. But Su Luo sneered twice, threw over a space gravity, and directly enveloped the 2 little monkeys. Space gravity didn't work for 2 puppets, but it's not that hard to catch 2 little monkeys. But Su Luo didn't expect that. The speed of these 2 monkeys was so fast. They run left and right like lightning. They were running away separately. Can't let them run away. This was the only thought in Su Luo's mind. As a result, Su Luo's palm was spread out, and 2 white stone-like pills appeared in her hands. These 2 pills were given by Master in the beginning, and she kept it used in case of emergency. Chapter 1956. Unexpected 8. But just now, she faced 2 witless puppets, therefore the pills was ineffective for both of them. But for the 2 monkeys, Su Luo smiled coldly, and the white pills were smashed left and right at the 2 flying monkeys. Su Luo was fast and accurate. The 2 golden monkeys were shrouded in Su Luo's space gravity, and their speed had reduced a lot. So, the 2 monkeys were hit directly on the forehead. No one expected that the white pills exploded the moment it was smashed. A slight noise was heard. The powder of the pills filled the air, and then it disappeared without trace. It was colorless and tasteless, but it was very effective, because it was a good proof of how effective the pills to those 2 adorable golden monkeys. The 2 of them ingested the powder in the air, and afterwards their bodies swayed, as if they were drunk. There was a smile in the corner of Su Luo's mouth. This was from when she was learning to refine pills with Master on the mountain. When Master gave her lectures about bewitching pills, she didn't understand it at that time, so Master started to make a furnace of pills. At that time, Master left 2 for her, saying that bewitching pills could control the mind of magical beasts, but the time was only a quarter of an hour. Suluo always thought that this bewitching pills was only have little value. At that time, she threw it in the corner. Unexpectedly, after such a long time, it was really used. 2 golden monkeys were confused, but Su Luo had cleared their ability to communicate and understand something. Sure enough, as the little sable said, the 2 golden monkeys were the one manipulating the 2 wind and fire attributed puppets behind scene to murder her. At this moment, Su Luo sneered. Outside the light screen, many people were flabbergasted. What's going on? Where did the 2 golden monkeys come from? In the past, those assessment candidates had it hard. Many of them were beaten to death by those puppets' fists. Although many assessment candidates were defeated by the puppets, but inevitably there would be a few who could beat them. But this time, what's with those 2 golden monkeys? How did it come out? Did those golden monkeys also existed during their assessment at that time? For a moment, everyone stared at the 2 intoxicated golden monkeys in the light screen. The reason why they paid attention to the 2 monkeys was because before the 2 golden monkeys appeared, the 2 wind and fire puppets was still chasing behind Su Luo's back. But now, they unexpectedly stood in the same place like 2 small hillsides, and they were motionless, did not move a single jot. This phenomenon immediately made everyone dumbfounded. The whole scene was boiling. Many people had red eyes. Because of this discovery, it would completely transform the future candidates. In the future, the candidates don't need to work hard to resist the puppet's attack. Don't call the wind and fire puppets in this level. Just call the golden monkeys. Really, the children who were trampled to death by those wind and fire puppets before are pitiful. It turns out that the true essence of this level is to find monkeys. Many people looked at Su Luo with a surprised look. It was really an eye-opener to come and watch the assessment. This time, what they saw with their own eyes had inspired them a lot. Many people also think of this, so they had full of favorable impression towards Su Luo. At this time, Su Luo in the light screen was preparing to leave quickly. Because there was not much time left, only the last quarter of an hour. Chapter 1957, Unexpected 9. So, Su Luo ran forward quickly, and within a few moments, she had already rushed to the top of the mountain. Blood-red flower. Finally, I could pick you. The corner of Su Luo's mouth was lifted into a bright smile of victory, however. When her hand was stretched out, she discovered that there seemed to be a mysterious power around the blood-red flower. Su Luo's hand could not reach it. What's going on? There was a big question mark on Su Luo's head. She's been through all sorts of hardship, overcame all the difficulties in the way, and painstakingly climbed to the top. And the result was that she could not pick it? What the hell is this? Just as Su Luo almost cursed, she suddenly noticed that one of the 9 petals of the blood-red flower didn't bloom. In a flash, Su Luo seemed to understand something. She just turned around and ran down the mountain. Her speed was fast, because she had less than quarter of an hour now. Su Luo understood at this time. The reason why she couldn't pick blood-red flowers was because the system judged that her task had not been completed. That is to say, she hadn't killed 2 wind and fire puppets. But she couldn't break their defense at all, and trying to kill them, wasn't it easier said than done? Su Luo secretly made complaints in her heart. But soon, she came up with a wonderful way, which is the most time-saving and energy-saving. When Su Luo ran down, the 2 golden monkeys were still swaying there, like a roly-poly toy. After Su Luo stood there, she took a deep breath and used her spirit power to directly infiltrate the monkey's mind. At this time, the golden monkeys was controlled by bewitching pill, which made their soul power at its weakest, so it was quickly controlled by Su Luo. Su Luo gave orders in the mind of the 2 golden monkeys. What is Su Luo doing? She seems to be giving orders to the 2 golden monkeys. Funny, right? Can the 2 golden monkeys really listen to her? Why do I think this matters is weird? What order do you think Su Luo gave to the golden monkeys? It's unlikely to make the 2 wind and fire puppets kill each other, right? But if that's the case, It would be very interesting. Are you daydreaming? Make them kill each other. If Su Luo really has this ability, how could she be chased into such a sorry figure before? Countless people were talking about it. Louis looked at Qing Yi, looking very nervous. Senior sister, you say? Qing Yi's complexion was very ugly, and her voice was as cold as the ice and snow accumulated for thousands of years. She said slowly, "She will not succeed. Master, she will never let her succeed." Qing Yi had this confidence. Amen. With Qing Yi's assurance, Lu Yi's heart was slightly put down. In the light screen, Su Luo's performance surprised many people. Because Su Luo's order was very vicious, she truly ordered the two golden monkeys to make the wind and fire puppets to kill each other. Roar! Roar! A wind puppet, a fire puppet. Originally, their hatred was locked on Su Luo, but at this moment, the two of them seemed to have completely forgotten Su Luo, and as if they were enemies to each other. Two puppets, one on the left and one on the right, rushed out with a powerful speed in an instant. They rushed forward like a bull. Bang! There was a loud sound. Two puppets the same size as a small mountain hit each other in an instant. Spark was flying everywhere. Mountains fall, and the earth splits. The mountain shook. Chapter 1958. Unexpected 10. Before the dust on their bodies dispersed, they shot fiercely at each other again. For a time, the battle of the two wind and fire puppets with equal strength were intense and exciting. Outside the light screen, those people's eyes were falling out. It's impossible, right? How can it be? Many people were amazed, many people were shocked, and many people thought they had problems with their eyes. However, the facts proved that what they saw is true. Two legendary stumbling blocks that said it was the most difficult 9th mountain pass. They said the wind and fire puppets had obstructed countless of assessment candidates, but now they were actually fighting with each other. Could there be anything more ridiculous than this? Could you save more energy when you pass the 9th mountain pass? Evildoers! This girl named Su Luo seemed to be born to break the assessment rules of the training camp. At this moment, many people almost knelt down and worshipped Su Luo. From many years of the training camp assessment, from countless times of the assessment, today is too wonderful, and it's really eye-opening, isn't it? Su Luo, who was given numerous praises, was scratching the back of her head in depression. She was constantly urging in her heart, "Hurry up, two wind and fire puppets, why don't they fight faster?" Time was running out. 5 minutes, 3 minutes, 2 minutes. Su Luo almost stamped her foot anxiously. At this point, those people outside the light screen seemed to have finally discovered this matter, because a number had already appeared on the light screen. That number was counting down. 100 seconds, 80 seconds, 60 seconds. Oh, the time is running out. Why isn't she finished yet? If Su Luo fails because of lack of time, it's a pity. At this moment, many people were worried about Su Luo. Even Su Luo herself didn't know that she had gained a lot of people's hearts unknowingly. No matter. Su Luo strode forward and rushed to the top of the mountain in one breath. Blood-red flower. Why don't you open quickly, ah? Su Luo's prayer really seemed to be working, because she was staring at the last petal that was still motionless before, slowly opening its body. However, it was opening too slowly. 40 seconds, 30 seconds, 20 seconds. Outside the light screen, many pair of eyes filled with joy, excitement, tension, and all kinds of emotions. They all stared at the light screen, staring at the quickly disappearing time, staring at the petals that would not bloom quickly. It's over. The time is over, Su Luo lost. Already at this stage, but she lost like this, really unreconciled. If there were 5 more minutes, no, just 1 more minute. Lu Yi, with her hands on her hips, rejoiced in other people's misfortune, and laughed to her heart's content. Lost, Su Luo lost. Huh? What's your last name? Unfortunately, your last name is lost. Even the heavens won't help you. Ha 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 dash heavens. Look at Su Luo's hand. Just as Lu Yi were laughing, a sharp cry suddenly interrupted her excitement. The time on the light screen has jumped to the last 10 seconds. 10 seconds. 7 seconds. For seconds, Louis subconsciously looked at Su Luo's hand. Those white, tender, jade-like fingers were picking the blood-red flower at lightning speed. Countless people take a breath of cold air, all thinking, will she succeed? Chapter 1959. Disposing in the Dark. 1. Those white, tender, jade-like fingers had reached in. At this moment, all the people were staring wide-eyed, holding their breath, and all their attention was focused on the pair of white, jade-like fingers. Just in the last second, bang! Su Luo plucked the blood-red flower at one stroke. Plucked! Plucked! It's plucked! Outside the light screen, there was a burst of thunderous applause. At the same time, many people were shaking their fists in excitement, shouting and jumping loudly, even more excited than their own success. Su Luo's closed eyes slowly opened, and then she saw the blood-red flower in her right hand, stared at it for a long time. Finally, she took a big sigh of relief and smiled brilliantly. This smile was unparalleled and devastatingly beautiful. Even many years later, many people couldn't forget Su Luo's beautiful smile at this moment. Finally succeeded. Su Luo hooked her lips and smiled. Finally, the blood-red flower was successfully picked in the last second. It was really too thrilling and exciting. If it was just a second later, she would be just one step short of success. It seemed that God still blesses her. Su Luo cheered herself in her heart. Suddenly, Su Luo's eyes flashed. As if she was thinking about something, she quickly rushed from the top of the mountain to the bottom. There's other way down the mountain, ah. How can she go back? What is she doing? Doesn't she know that if she goes back, she will still have to go through those mountain paths? Could it be she has discovered a secret? For a while, countless eyes were staring at Su Luo with bright eyes. Everyone was guessing her strange behavior. Su Luo hurried down, and soon came to the place where the two puppets fought. Two huge puppets at the size-small hill, fighting for life or death. The aftermath were still very severe. There were pits on the ground, one pit after the other, and these pits were very deep. It took one glance to know that they had stamped their feet in it. The two of them were equal in strength, so they were evenly matched, and they both exploded in the end. Their bodies were reduced to fragments and scattered on the ground, one in the east and one in the west. Some were even half-burned. Seeing this scene, Su Luo couldn't help but sigh. These puppet materials were useless for others, but they were useful for her, because the battle god puppet needed to eat these supplements. Su Luo could vaguely feel that in recent times, her connection with the battle god puppet was a little closer, and she could sense the battle god puppet's proportion. If it is said that the battle god puppet could only be effective if it reached 100%, then after Su Luo fed him from time to time, his spirit power now reached 20%. Based on the principle of not wasting, Su Luo diligently picked up these puppet fragments one by one. Because the two puppets were so huge, although they lost a lot in this battle, there were still a lot of usable ones. With a wave of Su Luo's hand, all the hill-like puppets' waste fragments entered her space. With these puppet fragments, maybe the battle god puppet would not be hungry for a long time. Just when Su Luo was collecting puppets' fragments, suddenly, she felt a strange metal material. Su Luo stretched out her hand and grabbed the little thing. Windfire wheel? Su Luo looked at the two wheels in her hands. His eyes suddenly brightened. Chapter 1960. Disposing in the Dark 2. She remembered clearly that the two wheels were used by the two puppets at that time, but because the wind puppet and the fire puppet were so huge, the two wheels were small like little black dots. They were ignored by her, but it was undeniable that the power of the two wind and fire wheels were quite powerful. Su Luo wanted to try the power, but she thought that she was in the assessment area now. No matter what she did, people outside could see it. Think of this. Su Luo raised a light smile at the corner of her mouth, and then calmly put the wind and fire wheel into her space. Because of her fast speed at this period of time, almost no one saw Su Luo collect a pair of wind and fire wheels. Su Luo was just like a junk collector. She cleaned the battlefield and didn't even leave a piece of scrap iron. Where's the golden monkey? At this time, Su Luo thought of the two intoxicated golden monkeys, but she didn't see the two monkeys who helped her before, so she had to give up. Su Luo wanted to go back from the hillside, because she knew that Zi Yin and the others were waiting outside to congratulate her. As for the third level, it would be 3 days later. All of a sudden, Su Luo stopped at the top of the mountain. She stood there motionless, as if her acupoint had been hit. What's going on? What's wrong with Su Luo? She seems to be stuck. What's stuck? Do you think she's putting on a play? For a moment, all the people outside the light screen looked confused and suspicious to see her standing still at the top of the mountain, and they were extremely puzzled. Ziyin was also secretly worried. It's not easy for Luo to finally pass the second level in the last second without any unexpected accidents. At this time, Su Luo's mind was also full of doubts. She wanted to make a sound, but found that she was not only unable to make a sound, but her body also stood there rigidly and could not move even a finger. At this time, there was a mechanical sound in Su Luo's mind. For the third level, draw lots now. The candidates shall choose from 1 to 9. If you don't make a choice within 10 seconds, it will be regarded as automatic abstention. Countdown has begun. 9, 8, 7. This voice, like a thunder, stunned Su Luo on the spot. Third level. Su Luo remembered very clearly. She asked Qingfeng before, she will not draw for the third round until 3 days later. Not now. But what's going on now? She hasn't been out of the second round of examination area. Let her draw the lots? But what is going on now? Before she could leave the second level's assessment area, they asked her to draw? Then what about after the draw is done? 6, 5 for... The mechanical sound gave out a cold air. 3, 2, 1. At the last second, Su Luo chose 1. Although Su Luo's situation was somewhat strange before, but in this case, she chose to draw first. The candidate chose 1. Now please get ready to enter the assessment tower in 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7. The series sound of sounds almost confused Su Luo. Before she could react, Su Luo felt darkness in her eyes. When she opened her eyes again, the world around her had changed drastically. At this time, all the people outside the light screen all looked dumbfounded. What's going on? What's really going on? What happened? How could the third level of the assessment be carried out now? Shouldn't it be 3 days later? Su Luo has just finished the second level and hasn't rested yet. It's not fair to assess the third level now. Whose idea is this? Why treat her like this? Chapter 1961. Disposing in the Dark 3. After watching the first two, many people had a favorable impression of Su Luo, and all subconsciously stood on her side to speak for her. But no matter how shocked, dissatisfied, or protested they were, in reality, she still had to be assessed, and their protest would not affect the present situation. At this time, inside the Bright Moon Palace Hall, the third elder came out. The bright red robe swayed gently and beautifully. She had a smile of success on her face. The smile was bright and beautiful. She walked out leisurely. She raised her eyes and saw the first elder. Her eyes flashed slightly, and her smile was even brighter. First senior brother has not left yet. It's lonely to play chess alone. Let this junior sister accompany you. After saying that, without waiting for the first elder to reply, she sat down opposite the first elder and looked at the chessboard with a smile. At this time, the first elder's always smiling face was shrouded in frost, and he looked at the third elder coldly. However, the third elder still smiled, seemingly unconcerned, and dropped a white chess piece. They laughed and said, "Why does the first senior brother look at this junior sister so ferociously? Why did you do that?" The first elder's brow was deeply furrowed. "What did I do?" First senior brother can accused unjustly. The third elder smiled and dropped the white piece, and made a gesture to the first elder. "First senior brother, if you don't concentrate, you will lose. You are too willful." The first elder put the black piece and stood up coldly. The third elder had never seen such a cold attitude of the first elder. Although her heart was a little uneasy, the mood soon disappeared. She looked at the first elder coldly. Since first senior brother is so unhappy, Then don't stay here. Goodbye. I won't bother to see you out. 3 long old sides said while turning. Qinglin, you are confused. The elder looked at the back of the 3 elders and took a deep breath. One day the Lord will come back, you. It is unclear to say. Will the Lord of the city help Su Luo's stinky girl instead of helping her? The 3 elders couldn't bear this anymore. The elder took a deep look at the 3 elders, took a deep breath, and finally smiled helplessly. He waved his hand and sighed. Okay, your business, I don't want to persuade my brother, but Su Luo, brothers must protect them. You! The 3 elders turned around, glaring at the elder, and his eyes seemed to be burning with fire. Master is determined to oppose me? Brother just obeys the Lord of the Lord. The elder's eyes flashed coldness. And finally, he took a deep look at the 3 elders and said coldly, "This is the last time." After that, the elders' figures slowly disappeared in place. At this point, Su Luo had opened his eyes and looked at the completely transformed scene around him. Here is a misty wasteland. At a glance, the fog was heavy, the fingers were not visible, and the visibility was very low. The sound of ghosts and wolves lingered around, one after another, endless, making people goosebumps, a kind of creepy fear. It seems that the whole world is left with only one living person. The unknown fear and loneliness caused Su Luo's heart to stagnate for a moment. The situation was urgent at the time, and Su Luo chose the number 1 pick casually. But until now, Su Luo didn't know whether her number 1 pick was the best or worst. Chapter 1962. Disposing in the dark. For Su Luo was still uncertain, but those outside were as clear as daylight. Just finished the 2nd level and went straight to the 3rd level, and it was still the hardest one of the 9 options. Su Luo is really going to be done for now. It can only be said that Su Luo is really unlucky. Someone might be manipulating things behind the scenes. How can she get that option? The name of this stage is Be of One Mind, which is pleasant to hear, but there are numerous people who died in this stage. Notes. Refer to the option Su Luo took. I can't seem to find the right words. As far as I remember, no one seems to have passed this stage, right? Outside, a lot of people were talking about it. One side was watching the bustling scene, and the other side was dispelling the doubt for people who did not understand. In the 3rd level, there were 9 options, but only one stage was assessed, and it was depending on luck. The Be of One Mind stage was publicly known as the most difficult one among the 9 options, and it also have another name, called the Impossible Task. Su Luo was a newcomer, and she didn't know it at all. In fact, even if she knew it, it was useless, because the 3rd elder used an underhanded method on this stage. Naturally, she also paid some price. In fact, those 9 options, no matter what Su Luo chose, what came out would be this impossible task. In the dark, suddenly, a strong light was projected from midair onto Su Luo. On the dark and misty ground, there was an aperture of 10 meters in diameter, and Su Luo was standing steadily in it. If one looked carefully, it could be seen that Su Luo's body was tense at this moment and has entered a state of full vigilance. In this extremely tense state, a dark shadow that was almost integrated with the night coldly stepped into the white aperture. When Su Luo saw the dark shadow in front of her, she almost fell to the ground. Alike, so much alike. This person looked exactly like her. Not only that, but even the clothes, the weapons, everything looked alike. There was no difference at all. Su Luo was going crazy. What the hell is going on here? How could there be another me? They don't have a special cloning technology, right? For convenience, Su Luo gave her shadow a name, Su Ying. If one have to say the difference between Su Ying and Su Luo, it was the emotion. Su Ying was cold from the beginning, as if she was made of mud, without personal emotions. After discovering this, Su Luo felt relieved at this moment. If this Su Ying was exactly like her, then she would really cry. Su Ying said coldly to Su Luo, "Welcome to the impossible task. As long as you step on my corpse, you will be past the assessment successfully." This mechanical voice was clearly the female voice who urged Su Luo to choose the lottery number in her mind. It was truly when enemies face each other, their eyes blaze with hatred. Su Luo knew that this person who looked exactly like herself was definitely not real, and she shouldn't worry about it that much. If she really did not do her best because of the scruples in her heart, then she would really follow the task designer's plan. Su Luo took a deep breath, and her slightly fluctuating mood gradually calmed down at this time. Don't talk so much nonsense. Let's start. Before the voice fell, Su Luo had already taken the initiative to strike first, like an arrow flying off the string and shot toward the other side. Then in an instant, she was in front of Su Ying. Facing the Cheng Ying sword that Su Luo swung to cut off her head, the corner of Su Ying's mouth raised a scornful sneer. Chapter 1963. Disposing in the dark, 5 Su Ying's right palm was spread out. Then the same Cheng Ying sword was lying quietly in her hands at this moment. At this moment, Su Luo's Cheng Ying sword was striking down at her. Bang! 2 identical Cheng Ying swords converged in the air, and golden sparks was flying everywhere. Su Luo and Su Ying each took a step back. They both had equal strength. Because Su Ying was practically Su Luo's mirror image, she could do what Su Luo could do, and she had all that Su Luo had. And because she had no emotions, there would be no emotional fluctuations, and her mental strength would be more focused and concentrated. In this point, Su Luo still losing out a little. Su Luo frowned slightly at this moment. She really regarded Su Ying as her opponent. It was not strange for one to defeat one's enemy, but if one could even defeat themselves, what else could one fear in this world? They would have no fear. Thinking of this, Su Luo became more determined to defeat Su Ying. Kill! Su Ying yelled, and raised the Cheng Ying sword with both hands, and rushed toward Su Luo. She used on Su Luo's most familiar spirit dance steps, used Su Luo's most familiar sword moves, and have the most familiar murderous aura. Su Luo's fighting spirit's sword in an instant. Kill! Su Luo also raised the Cheng Ying sword and rushed toward Su Ying. 2 people, with the same appearance, the same body shape, the same weapons, the same moves, and they also flew towards each other rapidly. Clang, clang, clang! In midair, 2 Cheng Ying swords were continuously clashing against each other. There was darkness all around, and only that small aperture was illuminated with light. The 2 people came out of the aperture for a while, then fought in the aperture in the next moment. The battle was extremely fierce. At this moment, the people outside the light screen were completely dumbfounded. They rubbed their eyes subconsciously. Now, in the end, which one is the real Su Luo? I'm completely confused. It's not just you who can't figure it out. I don't think anyone can figure it out except for themselves who is fighting inside, right? The 2 look exactly the same, and their strength is also the same. Do you think Su Luo will win? It's impossible to win. You only see the surface, but you don't know. The shadow has no pain. Even if the shadow is slashed, the strength will not decrease. At this point, the combat effectiveness will be increased to 120%. You say, how can Su Luo win? After hearing this, many people shook their heads and sighed, and their eyes were full of regrets. Lu Yi's mood was very good at this moment. She was full of spirits and excitement. It's better if Su Luo loses. She suddenly remembered what Su Luo said to Ziyin before she entered the arena. She could hear the words clearly. At this time, Lu Yi casted a mocking glance at Ziyin. Don't you say you want to win a lot of points? At this moment, do you dare or not to bet? Ha ha, Ziyin looked at the Lu Yi silently. Why won't I dare to bet? You still dare to bet? Lu Yi stared at her, found it hard to believe. Don't dare to make a bet. I dare to take a bet. Ziyin smiled scornfully at the corner of her mouth, turning her chin arrogantly, ignoring the furious Lu Yi behind her. You really dare to bet? Good, very good. I'll give 5,000 points. With a wave of her hand, Lu Yi took her own token and walked towards Ziyin. Are you certain you have 5,000 points in that lousy token of yours? Ziyin smiled, but her disdain was very obvious. Chapter 1964. Disposing in the dark 6. Lu Yi was enraged. This sentence pierced her heart. In fact, she really didn't have 5,000 points. The only 1,000 points she have were lost to Z in a few days ago. But such a good opportunity now, it would be a shame not to get back at her. Then, Lu glared at Ziyin, and her eyes turned to Qingyi. Senior sister, Lu shook Qingyi's sleeves coquettishly. Her senior sister was in the genius training camp. It was easier to earn points than the people outside. So, Lu was sure that her senior sister must have a lot of points. It's only 5,000 points senior sister will pay for you. Qingyi waved her hand, indicating that it was a trivial matter. Lu was very excited, and then she raised her chin towards Ziyin. 5,000 points. Can you afford it? If you can bet, I can compensate. Ziyin sneered. Anyway, she is also a disciple of the city master. Even if she lose, she still have the ability to gather the points. Not to mention Lu Yi's attitude. If she did not get the points that she voluntarily sends, she was afraid that Su Luo would knock her head when she came out. Well, you, senior brother Lin, you can testify and be the witness. Lu Yu shouted to Lin Banley. Lin Banley agreed. So the bet started again. Within the light screen, Su Luo and Su Ying were locked in a fight. Clang, clang, clang. The sword was shining, the sword was flickering, and the afterimages continued. Su Luo was fighting and trying to figure something out. Just now, taking advantage of Su Ying's carelessness, she stabbed her back with the sword. But when the sword went down, what makes Su Luo felt that she's falling apart? Su Ying's body was just like cotton. There was no blood flowing out. Seeing her shadow, she saw that her strength had not been weakened at all. Su Ying saw that Su Luo was stunned. The sneer on the corner of her mouth was very obvious. You can't neither beat me nor kill me. The implication was she had an indestructible body. Realizing this, Su Luo felt that she was in big trouble. She really hoped that the one with indestructible body was herself. But now that it was replaced by her opponent, she wanted to cry but have no tears. Bang! A gravity attacked on Su Luo's back. Su Luo couldn't hold back, and her body rushed forward. At the same time, Su Ying's sword came. The sword, quick and straight towards Su Luo's back and to her heart. At the last moment, Su Luo's figure deflected a little, otherwise her heart would be pierced immediately. Su Ying sneered. You are injured, and your strength will gradually weaken because of the pain and blood loss. You are doomed to die in my hands. After the voice fell, Su Ying continued the killing moves and kept attacking Su Luo. At this time, Su Luo only held her own, but not attacked. Finally, with a crash, Su Luo was thrown out to a distance, and her body made a curve in midair. Of course, she fell to the ground. There was a faint sound of bone fracture. Lying on the grass, Su Luo clenched her hands angrily. It's not fair. Not fair at all. But the world was inherently unfair. How could there be absolute fairness in this world? Since the person behind the scenes arranged her to draw out the most difficult lots, and the purpose was to kill her, how could that person let her off? Su Luo's blood was flowing out of her chest, and soon her goose-yellow dress dyed red like the color of hellflower, exuding a life-threatening and soul-stirring curse. Stupid. Want to pass the third level with such strength? Go to hell. There was a hint of ridicule in Su Ying's deep eyes, and then she made a move without hesitation. Chapter 1965. Third level, passed. 1. In that moment, there seemed to be countless pictures flashing before Su Luo's eyes. Everything flashed before Su Luo's eyes like a movie, and then it stopped one by one. Looking at the scene, Su Luo suddenly felt strange. Is this woman who can't even beat a shadow really herself? When did she become so weak, having to ask the enemy for fairness? Yeah, how could there be fairness in this world? From her last life to this life, has she ever seen what is fair? Only losers will complain about the unfairness of the world, and winners will not complain like this. This Su Ying was nothing more than just a shadow. No matter how powerful the shadow is, it's still a fake. To be frightened by a fake one. If Nangong Luyan is here, it's very likely that she will be laughed at. How can I lose to her? How can I give up? Didn't I promise Nangong Luyin to wait for him to come back and marry me? What if he finds that her grave was already covered with long grass when he comes to marry her? What should he do then? At the thought of this, Su Luo's heart was painful, but at the same time, her courage was multiplied. Even if Su Ying doesn't feel pain, even if she has an indestructible body, she is just a shadow. Her own shadow. Why can't the real body beat the shadow? With the ice-cold and bone-chilling sword's energy, Su Luo's yellow figure suddenly turned into a ray of light, and even avoided Su Ying's sword under the impossible circumstances. Unexpectedly, you still have a trick. Su Ying's face, like the mysterious ice of 10,000 years, showed a trace of surprise for the first time. But it is useless. You should know that I am you, and I am better than you. I'm stronger and more perfect than you. This way, nobody can defeat their own self. Give up. Really? At this time, Su Luo's goose-yellow dress was still stained with a large amount of blood, and the blood on the corner of her mouth had not even been wiped yet. But don't know why. At this time, Su Luo seemed to be calm and collected. She looked as clear as a stream. There was no trace of the previous confusion and panic in the eyes. Instead, it was a firm and clear look. Su Luo looked at Su Ying and suddenly smiled. You are fake. Su Luo's voice was very light, even with a smile, as if she was talking about a common thing. But subsequently came the dazzling light of the sword. The Cheng Ying sword streak across the air, bright just like the falling stars, illuminating the wasteland sky in an instant. Su Ying's counterattack was extremely sharp. The onlookers who watched the battle through the light screen almost spontaneously cried out in alarm. At this moment, everyone couldn't help but to be anxious for Su Luo. Now Su Ying completely exceeded her own limits, and the strength shown was far beyond anyone's imagination. However, at the next moment, Su Luo's cold voice was heard, and the dazzling sword was raised. Fake is fake. No matter how lifelike or beautiful, it's still a fake. Then, all of a sudden, the onlookers saw that a crack appeared quietly in the sword light, which was so dazzling as if the galaxy was falling into the ninth heaven. Then a crack quietly appeared. In this beautiful sword light, this crack was as ugly as a scar. But this scar, in an instant, it cut open the light of the sword all over the sky, and then only heard a slight chi sound. Chapter 1966, Third Level, Past. 2. The whole world suddenly quieted down. Su Luo and Su Ying were nearly stopped at the same time. Time seemed to be frozen. There was no sound between the heaven and earth. All the onlookers held their breaths at the same time. The tense and suffocating atmosphere affected everyone. Everyone opened their eyes desperately, did not even dare to blink. They stared unwaveringly at the two people. A second pass felt like a year. Finally, a dripping sound was heard, breaking the suffocating silence. Drip, drip, drip. One after another, it sounded in everyone's ears, and it was not known how long it took for the onlookers to suddenly make an exclamation. Su Ying is lost. Yes, Su Ying is lost. Su Luo's sword penetrated Su Ying's chest. At this time, the blood dripped down the Cheng Ying sword with a dripping sound. The blood dripped faster and faster. Finally, it became a pool of blood on the ground. Su Ying, who lost her life, fell softly in the pool of blood. Su Luo only felt that her eyes were dark and her head was dizzy. When she opened her eyes again, she had arrived in a familiar place. This place was the gate to Baimang Mountain. Su Luo remembered that before, she had broken through the commander rank at a critical moment. Thus SH could open the door with the aura of commander rank. It's only been 2 days, but Su Luo felt as if it was a lifetime ago. The huge red door was slowly pushed open by white, jade-like fingers. Behind the door, Su Luo's thin figure appeared. Suddenly, there was a commotion in the crowd. Su Luo came out. She wasn't dead. So, she won the battle? That is to say, she passed the assessment of the genius training camp. Swish dash, countless pairs of eyes were all focused on Su Luo's beauty. Under the gaze of everyone, Su Luo remained calm and collected, with a decent smile on her face, and came out leisurely. At this time, her clothes were damaged and her face was a little dark. However, these things did not damage her beauty, and even made people felt a little bit better about her. At this time, who dared to say that Su Luo was only depending on using tricks? Who would dare to say that Su Luo was not assessed based on strength? You know, Su Luo was cheated under the watchful eyes of the people. The third level of the assessment should not have been held right after she passed the second level. Luo Luo. Ziyin flew towards Su Luo like a butterfly, took her hand, looked her up and down, and eagerly asked, "I saw you hurt. How is your injury? Is it serious?" Su Luo smiled and patted her hand. "It's not serious. It's not serious at all. Don't you think I'm okay?" In fact, the injury was very serious, but fortunately, most of Grandmaster Rong Yun's panacea was given to her. So under the effect of the panacea, even if Su Luo wanted to hurt, it would be difficult. Seeing that Su Luo looked really okay, Ziyin was a little relieved. Su Luo was afraid that Ziyin was worried about her injury, so she changed the topic. "Yes, didn't I tell you to earn points before I went in? Did you earn any points?" When she mentioned this, Ziyin was immediately excited. Originally, she hadn't swindled anyone, but Lu Yi, this foolish spendthrift girl, was insisting on delivering it to her, and she couldn't stop it. Ziyin turned to look for Lu Yi in the crowd. Lu Yi wanted to run, but Luo Yichen's deep eyes had been staring at her with a smile. She really did not have the nerve to run. Chapter 1967. Third level, passed. 3. So, when Ziyin looked over, Lu Yi ferociously glared at Ziyin. Ziyin immediately became happy. "Oh my, you've already lost like this. To whom are you showing that ferocious look? I said debtor. Hurry up and take out the points you owed." Ziyin proudly raised her chin and slowly extended her right hand. She even felt that it was beneath her dignity to look at Lu Yi. Lu Yi was so angry that she almost jumped. However, she was given a glare by Qing Yi. Lu Yi came back to her senses. This kind of thing could not be done in public, but wait until there were few people here? Eh? Humph. After getting Qing Yi's approval, Lu Yi was relieved. After being relieved, she began to feel proud again. Isn't it only 5,000 points? What are you proud of? Country bumpkins who have never seen the world. Lu Yi took Qing Yi's token and gave Ziyin a resentful glance, and finally transferred the points to her. But the Lu Yi did not feel much distress, because she had made up her mind. Wait until there was a quiet place. Wait for these people to be alone, and immediately take the points back. There are also the points that she lost a few days ago, and they must all be taken back. After collecting the points, Ziyin felt particularly happy. She modestly said to Su Luo, "It's only 5,000 points, too little." Su Luo smiled unhappily. "You get it cheap, but still pretend otherwise. Take it away quickly in order to avoid being beaten up in a sack in a secluded place and the token being snatched." Su Luo seemed to say that casually, but she looked at the Lu Yi with a smile. As she expected, Lu Yi's face turned a little dark. Sure enough, they took it seriously. It's really interesting that these people really had this idea. But Su Luo's eyes swept toward Qing Yi. Su Luo could feel that this person's strength was stronger than her. If she's going to do something, she might be able to escape, but Ziyin and the others would be in trouble. Although it was said that fighting was forbidden in the inner city, if it was a secluded place, it can be achieved if they run away before the city pickets arrived and erase the traces of fighting. Thinking of this, Su Luo's eyes are half narrowed, and she looked at Qing Yi with a sneer. At this time, Qing Yi's eyes also stare at Su Luo coldly, and her eyes showed her decision. Su Luo smiled and took her sight off Qing Yi. She asked Ziyin, "You bet with her. Don't you have a notary?" "We have. It's this person." Ziyin pointed to Lin Banley with a smile, yet not a smile, and added, "Senior brother Lin is the most loyal pursuer of Serene Fairy." Serene Fairy? It's a familiar name. It seemed that she had heard it somewhere. Seeing Su Luo's confusion, Ziyan pointed out a few words. Blood Mist Forest. Right. A memory flashed in Su Luo's mind. In the beginning, in the Blood Mist Forest, Su Luo remembered saving a spoiled young girl. The young girl proudly said that her grandfather was in charge of Serene's pavilion. Serene Fairy was the disciple that the third elder most proud of. Lu Yi and Qing Yi seemed to understand Su Luo's thought. At this time, there was a scornful sneer on their lips. Although Lin Banli may not help them openly, as long as they said the words of senior sister Serene, Lin Banli will definitely not hinder her. Su Luo wanted Lin Banli to send them back. Dream on. Looking at Lu Yi's sneer, Su Luo also understood that Lin Banli was unreliable. She glanced helplessly at Lin Banli and then turned her eyes slightly. Chapter 1968. Third level passed. For Lin Banli, this person, very powerful, unfathomable. At least the current Su Luo could not compare to him. Is this or also one of the Serene Fairy's suitors? Su Luo looked at Luo Yichen with a smile. There's an aura field in the interaction between the people. More clearly, it could be said that he and those people did not hit it off with each other. Su Luo didn't get along with Lin Banli at the first sight, but he didn't repel Luo Yichen. Before, he had seen her in the light screen countless of times, but this was the first time for Luo Yichen to look closely at Su Luo. From a close distance, he could see the fine hair on Su Luo's temple. In front of her, even the Serene Fairy would lose colors. Luo Yichen was slightly shaken by Su Luo's smile, but he soon returned to his mind and slightly raised his lips. Naturally not. After hearing this, Su Luo breathed a sigh of relief. No matter intentionally or unintentionally, she and Serene Fairy haven't even met yet, but they were destined to be enemies. So if Luo Yichen was also the admirer of Serene Fairy, Su Luo would be really disappointed. What's your name? Su Luo looked at him with a smile. This one is Luo Yichen. Senior brother Luo, would you like to visit Blue Cloud Peak? The scenery there is very good. Su Luo's big black and white eyes flashed at Luo Yichen. Almost no one could hold out under such a gaze. So Luo Yichen also could not. Su Luo felt that among the people present, Luo Yichen's cultivation was the highest, so she guessed that Luo Yichen must be a senior brother in the genius training camp. She was oblivious on the genius training camp. Now that there's Luo Yichen, it would be the best. Of course, it's a matter of killing two birds with one stone to let him send them back in person. Luo Yichen smiled. Since the junior sister invites me, senior brother naturally will not refuse. Let's go. Luo Yichen agreed. Lin Banli looked back and stared at Luo Yichen in surprise. Since when does Luo Yichen become so easy to talk to? Doesn't he hate it when girls approach him? Doesn't he disdain of talking to women? How can he happily accept Su Luo's invitation? It's not rational. Lin Banli was extremely astonished. His eyes were almost glued to Luo Yichen's face, and he couldn't even take them off. Lu Yibhard that Luo Yichen promised to send them back. Her face suddenly turned red, and she clenched her fist in anger. She wanted to rush up and protest, but Qing Yi pulled her. Her face was shrouded in frost. Her eyes were like sharp knives, and she stared at Lu Yi. If you don't want to die, just stand here. But Lu Yi was so angry. That's 5,000 points. And there's also the 1,300 points she'd lost before. She was unwilling, very unwilling. There are many opportunities in the future. Don't rush this time. Qing Yi warned coldly. Lu Yi didn't know Luo Yichen's strength, but Qing Yi knew it clearly. In the genius training camp, the grades are strict and the levels are distinct. Luo Yichen is at the top position. Even Lin Banli and senior sister still have so much catching up to do. Who dares offend him? Don't look at him who's seemingly indifferent, but once someone provokes him, then the consequences is very terrible. They're lucky this time. Lu Yi could not accept it and snorted coldly. However, Qing Yi glanced at Su Luo and Luo Yichen, and her eyes were thoughtful and unfathomable. Chapter 1969. Third level passed. 5 luck? One's success couldn't depend on luck all the time. Luo Yichen was really nosy this time. This made Qing Yi's heart doubtful, but at the same time also became more vigilant. The group of people watched Su Luo left. At the foot of Blue Cloud Peak, Luo Yichen stopped. He took a deep look at Su Luo and left a jade ju to Su Luo. "You can contact me if you have something the matter." Then he turned and left. Wow, it's communication jade. Luo Yichen is very generous. Ziyin snatched the communication jade from Su Luo's hands. Looking at it from top to bottom excitedly, she looked like she loved it so much and could hardly bear to put it down. "What communication jade?" Su Luo was at a loss. Communication jade is... Ziyin thought of a more easy-to-understand explanation. In other words, within the Purgatory City, as long as you put your spirit energy in this communication jade, you can talk through this communication jade even if you are far away. It is really convenient. This is similar to the modern mobile phone. It's simply too good. Su Luo's eyes brightened. She immediately became very interested. "Is this communication jade really hard to come by?" Su Luo asked. "Only the talented people in the genius training camp has it," Ziyin said stiffly. Even though she is a disciple of the city master, she didn't have this privilege. "But Luo Yichen obviously has more than two." Su Luo touched her chin and pondered. "That is to say, there's still a chance to get it." Su Luo didn't have the opportunity to ask him just now, and she felt a little regretful. However, when her eyes fell on the communication jade, her eyes suddenly brightened. Luo Yichen's spirit power should be branded on it, right? "I'll try it." Su Luo studied the communication jade carefully and soon began to use it. She divided her spirit power in small amounts, and then a simple interface appeared in her mind. This interface was simpler than the communication software that Su Luo used in modern times, because there's only one row of contact on it, and this contact only has the name of Luo Yichen. Su Luo pressed the communication jade, and the name of Luo Yichen lighted up. "Senior brother Luo?" At the other end of communication jade, Luo Yichen stopped, and then a faint smile appeared on his unsmiling face. He cleared his throat, picked up the communication jade, and said coldly, "Amen." Hearing the sound coming from the communication jade, Su Luo was so amazed, gave her a feeling of returning to modern times. But in a moment, Su Luo regained her calm. She coughed twice. "Senior brother Luo, I have something to ask you. Is it convenient for you?" "Amen." Luo Yichen said a cold word again. Su Luo scratched the back of her head. This man was quite reserved. He doesn't want to say a more word. After she criticized silently, Su Luo asked with a smile, "Excuse me, Senior brother Luo, how did you get this communication jade? Do you still have it?" Luo Yichen obviously did not expect Su Luo to be so aggressive, and he didn't answer for a while. Su Luo also felt that she was a bit rude, so she quickly explained before Luo Yichen could reply. "Senior brother Luo, I still have a few friends." Luo Yichen was a smart man, so he could understand it. Su Luo was worried that her friends would be bullied after she entered the genius training camp, and she won't be able to get there quickly. Being able to show loyalty to a friend was a rare thing in Purgatory City. Luo Yichen didn't know whether to say Su Luo is foolish or not. Chapter 1970, Third Level, Past. 6. In the end, he still gave the answer to Su Luo's question, and he lightly said a sentence. "It's rewarded." "It was rewarded? That's very good." Su Luo's beautiful eyes bent into a curve. After saying goodbye to Luo Yichen, Su Luo said firmly to Ziyin, "After entering the genius training camp, I will get some for you. Don't worry. After you enter, the most important thing is your cultivation. You have to become stronger quickly." Ziyin explained seriously. The group of people laughed and went back to the hillside manor. Back to the familiar place, Su Luo was really relieved. At this time, the exhaustion accumulated in the past 2 days surged like a tide. After a simple wash, Su Luo jumped into bed and went to sleep. In the evening, Su Luo felt his stomach screaming, and then she woke up. Seeing her wake up, Ziyin brought a bowl of steaming chicken congee to warm Su Luo's stomach. "You're still the best to me." Su Luo held the chicken kanji. Happily eat it. Seeing Su Luo finished her meal, Zian told her, "When you were asleep, Ching Feng kept waiting in the hall. I asked him what's the matter, but he didn't disclose anything." Su Luo put the bowl aside, stood up, and walked outside. As she walked, she said, "It should be the first elder who wants to talk to me about something. I'll go out and ask." Hearing the familiar footsteps, Ching Feng's eyes swept behind the curtain. Su Luo opened the curtain, facing Ching Feng. "The first elder asked you to go up." Ching Feng's tone was more respectful than before. If the previous respect was based on the first elder's attitude towards Su Luo, then the current respect was from the heart. Ching Feng really admired Su Luo. He also went to take the assessment of the genius training camp, and he was at the middle of commander rank, but he was eliminated in the third mountain pass of the second level. But Su Luo, thinking of her speed of passing the levels, Ching Feng admired it from the bottom of his heart. The top of Blue Cloud Peak. This was the second time that Su Luo had seen the first elder since she left last time. On the edge of the cliff, a thatched hut stood in silence against the wind. When she saw the hut, she was a little surprised. The first elder is unlikely to live here, right? The dignified first elder, he's unlikely to do so, But when Su Luo looked at the hut again, her eyes began to shine. Good stuff, At first glance, it looked like it was made of poor weeds dried in the sun. But Su Luo took a closer look and found a clue. These grasses are not simple. Still won't come in? Just as Su Luo touched his chin and tried to pull up a piece of grass to study, a teasing voice came from the cottage. Su Luo gave up the idea and walked in. A white candle was lit inside the thatched hut, and the flames were subtle and looked very shabby. But when Su Luo smelled the smell of the room, she couldn't help laughing. The first elder is really... It seemed that he was very poor and backward, but the materials for making these things are really expensive. Even if you sell Su Luo, you still can't afford it. Old man, you are so extravagant that you use 10,000 spirit-burning incense to make ordinary white candles. Don't you be afraid it would be thrown and regarded as a waste? Su Luo casually sat down opposite the first elder. There was a chessboard in front of the elder, and he was playing by himself. The first elder raised his eyes and looked at Su Luo with a smile in his eyes. "You girl actually has a good eyesight. You could see that you're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.